end of 2022, everyone. Congratulations to every single one of us for surviving this year. This year has been, insert many adjectives here, but as far as reading and books are concerned, I would say I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty satisfied with my reading productivity this year. And it's time to talk about my top 10 top 10 best books, best reads of 2022. Two things though. Number one, I think I've already talked about my thoughts and feelings about all of these books. I still genuinely regret not doing exclusive reading vlogs for several of them in this top 10 list. But I think for the most part, I've already talked about my feelings and thoughts about them. So I'm not going to talk about them anymore. Number two, I really truly believe that I suck at explaining plot synopsis, and I don't really like doing that. Also, I don't really think anyone's gonna watch my videos anyway, so I'm just really doing it for myself to document the best things that I would like to remember about this book. So, in the future me that's going to watch this is why. These are your top 10 favorite books of this year. So simply put, I'm not going to tell you about the plot or synopsis of these books, what they're about, but I'm just going to read to you what I think are some of their best parts. And I'm just gonna let the books speak for themselves in hopes of you being enticed or intrigued or convinced to give them a try. Disclaimer, by the way, some of them might be really spoilery in terms of plot, so if you don't like massive spoilers, you might not like this type of content, but nevertheless, I hope it still encourages you to pick these books up because these are what made me fall in love with them. Also, please don't consider it as already seeing the best of what the book has to offer. I assure you, these are just some, alright, some of the excellent parts of the book, and there are a lot in every single one of these 10 books. So please don't be discouraged that the best part has already been ruined for you. I assure you there's so much more in store. These are just previews of how excellent and brilliant and wonderful they are. Number 10 on this list is The Mistletoe Bride and Other Haunting Tales by Kate Moss. Yes, we're truly going to start this list by a short story collection book. I'm going to read to you from Why the Yew Tree Lives So Long. This is the shortest piece in this collection and perhaps my favorite. The people of Sussex fear to walk in the oldest part of the forest. They say that at the winter solstice, the yew trees whisper to one another, sing sibilant song of the folly of men, and so they do. Each year, when the shimmering spirits walk, if you listen carefully, you will hear the trees speak of the hopes, the stories, the delusions of men, all the words they have captured in the seams of their leaves, the run of their branches over the previous year, the indiscretions of human beings as they have come to the grove to walk, to pray, to weep, to climb, to rest, to wish. The yew trees are the oldest living things in the country. They wish it was not so. They would like to slide softly away as can the ash and the oak and the alder. But human memory is brave, stupid, unconnected. Men have not yet learned to live side by side like the trees of the forest. So when the white winter dawn comes once more, and the solstice is over, the youths sigh and stretch and settle back into their ancient selves once more, for the length of an age. My number 9 favorite read of 2022 is Tall Story by Candy Gurley. I wouldn't make um, I wouldn't do a worst books or worst reads of 2022, but if I could just tell you, my worst read of 2022 is a YA book. And that really made me remember why I drifted far away from YA. And I think I already talked about how Tall Story made me rekindle and remember why exactly this genre is so dear to me in the first place. This is a Filipino coming of age YA. And Candy Cruelle is so good. Oh my goodness. Highly recommend this one too. Let me read to you. This is told in two points of view from the two siblings. And let me read to you one part that really tugged at my heart. Andy was small, but she was one of those people who gave the impression of packing an explosion of energy within her tiny frame. I swear it sometimes felt like she was taller than me. Now, as she rubbed her eyes on her uniform's shirt sleeves and clutched the ball for dear life, she looked like a little girl. Her chin rose and her eyes looked directly into mine. Look, I was disappointed when I found out that the Souls were boys only, but they let me train with them, which was cool even though they're hopeless at basketball. I was just taken aback when Rocky decided to sign you up. I couldn't help feeling disappointed. I wish I was you. Andy wished she was me? I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. How could anyone wish that they were me? I cleared my throat. I will not play, I said. It is wrong. They only want... I searched for the English word for sideshow, but it eluded me. Gimmick. They only want gimmick. Andy smiled, though tears continued to trickle down her face. I wish someone wanted me to be a gimmick on their team. It's not wrong, Bernardo. At least it's not wrong if you want to play. Do you want to play? I looked at Andy and suddenly I could see how much she wanted to play with the Souls, how much basketball meant to her, and me playing was the closest she would ever get to being in a team. At that moment, I wanted to play. For Andy. Number 8 on this list is yet another short story collection. This is Dear Distance by Luis Joaquin M. Katigbak. And whew, when I tell you how Philippine fiction really hit me the hardest this year, this is really the book that solidified, cemented that, because it's so good. Please give this a chance. Seriously, there are so many phenomenal pieces in this collection, but I'm going to read to you. I already included this on a reading vlog that I did where this is included, but oh my goodness, perhaps this is one of the best sentences, best lines that I've read this year. This is from the piece um, Little Fears. There are two varieties of betrayal, she explained. The first one everyone is familiar with. That is the betrayal of a moment, the impulsive act that destroys years of trust in one fell strike. That is the suddenly revealed secret, the sudden uncharacteristic infidelity. Everyone has heard stories about that kind of betrayal. She paused. The other kind is harder to identify and perhaps even more damaging. It is betrayal via accumulation, and neither party, the betrayer or the betrayed, may be aware of it, at least not at first. Even in the end, after the damage is apparent, they still may not be aware of it as betrayal, but betrayal it is. She took a long drag on her cigarette, exhaled smoke slowly. Accumulation, an accumulation of moments, or perhaps more accurately, an erosion of promises. In artists, it may be the betrayal of their talent, day after day, spurning their muse, postponing their art, until nothing is left but the ashes of possibilities. In lovers, it happens when one listens to the other voices. She paused for a longer time, this time until I was moved to echo. Voices?
Little annoyances, perhaps little fears, she continued. There is a true pure voice that runs under a true love, I believe. Otherwise, it is merely the satisfaction of impulses, romantic or lustful. She flicked ash and it seemed to pick up the pace of her speech. But everyone has doubts. All loves, true or not, have troubles. It may be that your lover truly is not the one for you and a leave taking is in order. But it may also be that you are swallowing daily doses of a poison. A third pause, the longest one this time, unbroken by me. Finally, betrayal happens, she said. It happens because you were weak. She emphasized the last word and ground out her cigarette on the ashtray as she did, and I knew the interview was over. Remembering that interview and typing this now, I decided to try and list my fears. I don't think I have too many, or perhaps what I mean is that not many of them are worth listing. I am, after all, afraid of wasting other people's time, or perhaps more to the point, I'm afraid of having my time wasted. I am afraid of avoidable hunger and of pain that is good for me. I am afraid that you might read this. I am afraid that you might think me affected and suspect me of trying to seem cool. I am afraid you will think I am uncool. I am afraid of the next 3 years being the same. I am afraid of things changing in any major way. I am afraid that if I open a book with pictures of seashores and fields now, it will just be a book with pictures of seashores and fields. I am afraid of being found out. I am afraid that you will never read this.
Number 7 on this list is Trigger Warning by Neil Gaiman. This is yet another short story collection, Short Fictions and Disturbances. This book is so special to me because this really got me thinking why exactly I am so drawn, so in love with Neil Gaiman's writing. I think it's because Neil Gaiman is the type of author who inspires aspiring authors, aspiring writers to never fall out of love with reading, with books, with writing. If I will ever do a list of best short stories that I've read for the year, I think this one has a very high chance of topping that list, and that is The Man Who Forgot Ray Bradbury. I love it so much that he provided brief introductions or explanations about each pieces in this collection. This in particular, he wrote for Ray Bradbury and made it Ray Bradbury read it.
I learned your books, burned them into my mind, in case the firemen come to town. But who you are is gone. I wait for it to return to me, just as I waited for my dictionary or for my radio or for my boots, and with as meager a result. All I have left is a space in my mind where you used to be, and I am not so certain about even that. I was talking to a friend, and I said, "Are these stories familiar to you?" I told him all the words I knew, the ones about the monsters coming home to the house with the human child in it, the ones about the lightning salesman and the wicked carnival that followed him, and the Martians and their fallen glass cities and their perfect canals. I told him all the words, and he said he hadn't heard of them, that they didn't exist. And I worry. I worry I was keeping them alive, like the people in the snow at the end of the story, walking backwards and forwards, repeating the words of the stories, making them real. I think it's God's fault. I mean, he can't be expected to remember everything. God can't. Busy chap. So perhaps he delegates things, sometimes just goes, "You, I want you to remember the dates of the 100 Years' War. And you remember Okapi. You remember Jack Benny, who was Benjamin Kobelski from Waukegan, Illinois. And then, when you forget the things that God has charged you with remembering, bam, no more Okapi. just an okapi-shaped hole in the world, which is halfway between an antelope and a giraffe. No more Jack Benny, no more Wiccan. Just a hole in your mind where a person or a concept used to be. I don't know. I don't know where to look. Have I lost an author just as once I lost a dictionary? Or worse, did God give me this one small task, and now I have failed him, and because I have forgotten him, he has gone from the shelves, gone from the reference works, and now he only exists in our dreams. My dreams. I do not know your dreams. Perhaps you do not dream of a veldt that is only wallpaper, but that eats 2 children. Perhaps you do not know that Mars is heaven, where our beloved dead go to wait for us, then consume us in the night. You do not dream of a man arrested for the crime of being a pedestrian. I dream these things. If he existed, then I have lost him, lost his name, lost his book titles one by one, lost his stories, and I fear that I am going mad, for I cannot just be growing old. If I have failed in this one task, oh God, then only let me do this thing that you may give the stories back to the world. Because perhaps if his works, they will remember him. All of them will remember him. His name will once more become synonymous with small American towns at Halloween, where the leaves skitter across the sidewalk like frightened birds, or with Mars, or with love, and my name will be forgotten. I am willing to pay that price if the empty space in the bookshelf of my mind can be filled again. Before I go, dear God, hear my prayer. A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Number 6 on my favorites of 2022 is Piranesi by Susanna Clark. I think this really influenced the way that I'm doing this reading vlog, because I don't know what to tell you about Piranesi. And if you are gonna give this a chance, it's really best not to know anything about it. But since I'm really just doing this video for me, um, I'll just read a great part, lots of great parts about this book, but I'll just read one in particular that I hope could also excite you.
Yesterday, I thought that I never wanted to read or look up entries in my journals again. I pictured myself throwing all 10 journals and the index into a raging tide, and I imagined how relieved I would feel to be free of them. But today I am calmer. I am less at the mercy of fear and panic. Today I can see that there are sound reasons for studying my journals carefully, even the mad parts. Perhaps especially the mad parts. First, I have always longed to know more about the people who have lived in. Incomprehensible as it is, the journals do seem to contain actual information about them, however bizarrely presented. Second, I need to learn as much as I can about my own madness, specifically what triggers it and how I can guard against it in the future. Perhaps by studying the past in the pages of my journal, I will be able to make sense of these things. In the meantime, it is important to recognize that reading the journals is in itself a triggering activity, giving rise to many painful emotions and nightmarish thoughts. I must proceed cautiously and only read small portions at a time. The other and the prophet have both stated that the house itself is a source of madness and forgetfulness. They are scientists and men of intellect. When two such impeccable authorities are in agreement, then I believe I must accept their conclusions. The house is the cause of my forgetting. Do you trust the house? I ask myself. Yes, I answer myself. And if the house has made you forget, then it has done so for good reason. But I do not understand the reason. It does not matter that you do not understand the reason. You are the beloved child of the house. Be comforted, and I am comforted.
And we are already on the top 5. Oh my goodness. Number 5 on my best reads of 2022, My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. My Dark Vanessa is an important book. This is really the kind of books, the kind of stories that motivate and heavily inspires writers to keep on writing, 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 because there are so many stories, tales, truths, and voices that needed to be heard. And so we must always soldier on and keep on writing and writing and writing. That's my most important takeaway about My Dark Vanessa. Honestly, it's kind of hard to really pick which one to read because I don't really want to read to you something that could paint this as a romance because it isn't. And it's a very significant thing to remember, okay? If I read something beautiful, just because it's beautifully written doesn't mean that I'm romanticizing it. It's an important piece of literature for me because it really tells you something so ugly, so terrible, and it tells you that it deserves to be heard. Um, Thought provoking books, truly the best.
He says, Vanessa, when you look back, you'll remember me as someone who loved you, just one of many. I guarantee your life is going to be so much bigger than me. I let out a shaky breath. Maybe he's right. Maybe there's safety in what he says. A chance to walk away unscathed and unbound. Is it really impossible to imagine that I might emerge from this worldly and wise, a girl with a story to tell? Someday when people ask me, who was your first lover? The truth will set me apart. Not some ordinary boy, but an older man, my teacher. He loved me so desperately I had to leave him behind. It was tragic, but I didn't have a choice. That's just how the world works. Strain reaches for me as he drives, his fingers tracing my knee. He still glances away from the road to check my face. He wants to make sure I like what he's doing. Does that feel good? Does that make me happy? My eyelids flutter as his hand moves up my thigh. He lives to please me. Even if we end up apart, right now, he worships me. His Dark Vanessa. That should be enough. I'm lucky to have this, to be so loved.
Number 4 on this list is Lovely War by Julie Berry. And you know what? This is quite honestly perhaps the most surprising read of the year for me. Like, I know somehow that I would love it. I know that this is going to be a great book, potentially a 5-star book, but I wasn't ready. I wasn't prepared for how marvelous, how perfect this book is. It really took me by surprise, and there's not a better feeling, right? Historical fiction is one of my favorite genres. I'm a historical fiction girl, for sure. Um, I've always known that historical fiction is the best way to lure me into reading fantasy because fantasy I'm not always a big fan of, but when you mix those two, it's very probable that I would end up liking it. But this one, historical fiction, fantasy, and romance, quite phenomenal. This is also so gorgeously written. I know that I'm late into loving this book. For several years, this has already been getting the rave and the hype that it so rightfully deserves. But nevertheless, it's really the kind of literature that's just timeless. So I think no matter what year you're living in, you should read this book and you will fall in love. I guarantee.
He'd never have met her if it wasn't for the war. And now the war had torn them apart. The war giveth, and the war taketh away. Blessed be the name of the war. His vicar back home would have had a swift comment on such blasphemy. James still remembered his cousin Will's funeral vividly. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. The Lord give it, the Lord take it away. God, bring me home to her, he whispered. Please. You may ask me, as others have done before, whether it was kindness or cruelty to allow them to meet so soon before his departure, with so little time to discover each other. Whether the pangs of loss do not invalidate the bliss of love, especially where war is concerned and death runs rampant with his bloody skite. You may say that it was wicked of me to allow James to find Hazel and Hazel James, if 3 days were all they would have. I don't call it cruelty. I do not apologize.
Number 3 on my favorite reads of 2022 is Salamanca by Dean Francis Alfaro. You probably not watched any of my videos before, but if you've been watching my videos, this will probably come up as a surprise because I've been loud about really obsessing over this book. I even had a giveaway for this title. That's how I loved it so much, and I still do, you know. Salamanca by Dean Francis Alfaro is just the kind of book that really challenges you to step up your writing game because it's that good, and really opened my love and respect and appreciation towards speculative fiction. Like, I would read anything by Dean Francis Alfaro. I love him, really. It might not be an easy read, to be completely honest. The prose is quite challenging, but in the writer perspective, this had me so jealous, so envious of how good he is. Like, how can you do that, Dean Francis Alfaro? Unfair. Let me tell you why.
I've never seen anything like it, Cesar whispered, feeling every inch the provincial man. His sense of wonder was engulfed almost immediately by heavy waves of doubt, causing everything he saw to lose its luster. A small part of him, the boy who had only known Palawan, wanted to run back to the cabin and wait for the ship to return to the island that had been his home for 19 years. Suddenly aware that he was a stranger among the people of the city, whose staggering size his mind could not encompass. That's nothing, Cesar, Gaudensha said to him with a smile. I have a universe to show you. The post-war city of Manila, capital of the Philippines, liberated by the Americans from the Japanese, sprawled like a woman forced to drink the wine of disaster. The chaos of burnt edges and tattered remains of her past glory juxtaposed with the precise new topography preferred by her saviors. 10 years after the war ended, Manila was on her feet and woefully shaking off the memories of her darkened days, when she had looked up in horror at the night sky, watching stars transform into bombs that rained fire and sorrow, in spite of prayers, courage, or obstinacy. But the process of rebuilding is an endeavor that takes time, and in her impatience to recover her life, the city decided to grow where she could, when she could, humoring the strict grid of the American architects while encouraging the rise and return of government buildings, universities, churches, homes, and places of commerce. The city was possessed by the spirit of speed, and her denizens put aside the ingrained justice of the Spanish in a frenzy of activity. For it was Manila's curse ever to grow beyond the imposed formalized and ritualized characteristics of her initial masters of 3 centuries, take what she came into contact with, and move towards whatever she needed to be in bursts of haste, fully aware that her energies were not infinite and that her people, once they reach a certain level of comfort, cease to think of tomorrow. So she erected restaurants and statues, racetracks and marketplaces, department stores, and dance halls, enticing everyone to walk and explore and mark her streets and roads and byways. A city that sang and danced and drank and ate and made love in a considered effort to fill the vacuum of the years lost to war, willingly savoring the taste of hope that for a long time was neither elusive nor impossible to imagine.
Number two on my favorite reads of 2022 is Breast and Eggs by Mieko Kawakami. Ah! I love this book so much. I will consider this the most thought provoking book for me for 2022. Um, every single chapter of this book really got me silent. Really got me thinking about so many things. And this really resonated so much because it explored so many perspectives of women and writers. Women writers. The straightforwardness, the sincerity, the honesty, the vulnerability is just stunning. It is disturbing in the most beautiful way that I could think of, and one that's so substantial to discuss. So I wish more people would read this because I want to know your thoughts. There are lots of points to agree and disagree with in this book, and I think that's what makes it a very beautiful piece of literature. Let me read to you one particular part that hurts so good.
I got up from the computer and lay out on the rug. It was a little chilly, so I grabbed a cotton blanket pulled up by my feet and draped it over my chest, making a comfy place to rest my hands. I had been thinking nonstop about sperm, but what about my eggs? For the most part, I had a regular 28-day cycle and I got my period every month, but at my age, there were plenty of other things to worry about. I turned on the TV. The weatherman was pointing at a giant weather map saying how tomorrow the weather would change for the worse. The light behind the closed curtains was growing dim, almost night. How many more times in my life would I sit back like this and find myself transfixed by the blue of the evening? Is this what it means to live and die alone? That you'll always be in the same place no matter where you are? Is that so bad? I asked myself out loud. I don't need to tell you that no one answered.
And of course, my best book, my favorite read of 2022 is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. It is so meta that this book is about stereotypes and cliche, and me and my reading experience about this book is literally just that because I saved the best for last. This is the last book that I read for 2022, and it's the best. Highly recommend this for romance readers who wants to explore and challenge their horizons because this story, this love story, really explores the trope, deconstructed the trope of opposites attract because finally here goes a love story that talks about two people who aren't just compatible but are also very similar to each other, and how that's not really a bad thing. That something healthy, that something safe and secure can still be so, so effective. And it's something so charming. It introduces us to the idea that love is so much more. That love is beyond the risk, the threat, the danger, and the thrill. That at the end of the day, love can be about settling down, about peace, about what makes you feel secure, and how that healthy perspective of love can be so mundane and yet still so magical and miraculous. And that counts.
I felt like I was suffocating. My voice breaks in a word, and his hands slide into my hair, his eyes rising to mine again. Like like everyone was looking at me and they could all see what's wrong with me, and I'm used to feeling like I'm the wrong kind of woman. But with Libby, it's always been different. She's the only person I've ever really felt like myself with since my mom died. But it turns out Dusty was right about me. That's who I am, even to my sister. The wrong kind of woman. Hey, he tips my face up to his. Your sister loves you. She said I have no life. Nora, he just barely smiles. You're in books. Of course you don't have a life. None of us do. There's always something too good to read. A weak half laugh whisks out of me, but the feeling doesn't last. She thinks I don't care about anything except my job. That's what everyone thinks. That I have no feelings. Maybe they're right. I laugh roughly. I haven't cried in a fucking decade. That's not normal. Charlie considers for a moment. His arms slide around my waist to lock against the small of my back, and the contact cannonballs directly into my thoughts, sending them zing away from the impact. I don't remember doing it, but my arms are around him too, our stomachs flush, heat gathering between us. You know what I think? Touching him feels so good, so strangely uncomplicated, like he's the exception to every rule. What? I think you love your job, he says softly. I think you work that hard because you care 10 times more than the average person. About work, I say. About everything. His arms tighten around me. Your sister, your clients, their books, you don't do anything you're not going to do 100%. You don't start anything you can't finish. You're not the person who buys a stationary bike as part of a New Year's resolution, then uses it as a coat track for 3 years. You're not the kind of woman who only works hard when it feels good or only shows up when it's convenient. If someone insults one of your clients, those fancy kid gloves of yours come off and you carry your own pen at all times, because if you're going to have to write anything, it might as well look good. You read the last page of books first. Don't make that face, Stephen. He cracks a smile in one corner of his mouth. I've seen you. Even when you're shelving, you sometimes check the last page, like you're constantly looking for all the information, trying to make the best, absolute best decisions.
And there you go. These are my top 10 favorite reads, my top 10 best books of 2022. Really made this year such a year to remember. What are your favorite reads, guys? And are any of those books in this list as well? Tell me about it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Happy New Year's and happy holidays again, guys. See you next year.